Today's workshop is based on the concept of stewardship, and the best metaphor for stewardship comes from the Holy Land, where from the hills of Hebron and the cedars of Sinai flows the Jordan River. It flows first into the Sea of Galilee, then it flows downstream into the Dead Sea. That's the best metaphor because my kids, I have 4 kids, some of them pretty young. I'm a member of the Old Dads Club. I'm 52 and yet I have a 4-year-old. So it's got to be good for some sort of record. Well, even my 4-year-old can get this idea. When God's blessings flow through us, the idea is that they keep on flowing so that our lives become like the Sea of Galilee rather than like the Dead Sea. Anybody here been to the Holy Land? Anybody here been in the Dead Sea? Things float. I mean, it's buoyant. It takes in and it keeps and it doesn't pass things. Let the blessings flow through it. As a result, it is dead. It is stagnant. This is the core concept of stewardship. Now, as the Bible presents financial concepts, Pam, what's the number? How many times is money mentioned in the Bible compared to prayer? I think it's 1,300 to 271. Yep. It's a big topic in the Bible. Money is one of the blessings that flow through us. We have lots of other blessings too. We have our time and our talent. But there's a real interesting juxtaposition. When you read C.S. Lewis, his most famous quote, "Joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God." His quote compared to the research done by a guy named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, an Eastern European researcher who studied high-performing athletes. They use that same kind of language when they describe what it felt like to jump 7 foot 6 inches high, or to dunk a basketball from the free throw line, or to run a 100-yard dash in 9 seconds. They talked about the joy of God blessing them with something they did not fully understand, but the tremendous joy of using that fully and totally. Now, those two different ways of examining this are discovered in a third category, the study of tithers who use the same language as the high-performing athletes. They said there is a sense of joy when I write that check. Now by tithers, I mean, I'm going to define it today as 10%. A great book on this called Give to Live by a guy named Gregory Lawson. He studied these guys in tremendous detail and he discovered things that we would normally know, like their immune systems function at a higher level than normal. He broke it down even to T-cell production, something that they can concretely measure. The more generous we are, the healthier we are, the more we live. And in a survey of their attitudes, they use the same language as those high-performing athletes and of C.S. Lewis. Isn't that interesting? So I think there's something positive to learn from those who get it right. And I think there's something to learn also from failure analysis. Anybody here been to the Museum of Air and Space in Washington, D.C.? We all probably know Orville and Wilbur Wright. They were really good at failure analysis. They failed a lot. There was a lot of crashes. That was kind of their specialty. Now for us in the stewardship world, there is a wonderful book on failure analysis. Whether you're Catholic or not, I would encourage you all to read it. It's called Why Catholics Don't Give. Anybody know what percent of annual income the average Catholic gives? 1.2%. Spoken like a knowledgeable Catholic. Compared to Church of the Resurrection Methodist, it's right at about 2.2%. So why that enormous gap? Villanova University took a real hard look at that and came up with a handful of characteristics that we're really going to dig into today. Now, the direction we're headed is that I'd like to share with you the research that's come out. I've been studying this full-time for 17 years and part-time since 1981, so I guess that makes it 28 years that I've been in this business. Annually, there's about $300 billion that's given away in this country. And that's an industry. That's as big as the car business. It's as big as the healthcare business. You get a business that big, people are going to study it. And I've read a whole lot of that research, and I want to share with you the statistics and the research that will help you increase stewardship without fundraising. Now, our bottom line that I want to come out of today with is that you have a bunch of how-to specifics that you can take back to your church and implement starting tomorrow. So our organization is to assist churches in their stewardship efforts. The main way we make money is through capital campaigns. This is our heart and our passion, is stewardship. And so we give this away as much, as frequently as we can at the cheapest price. Because this whole idea of God's blessing flow through us, I believe, is probably the second most important idea of Christianity. And I think once you become a Christian, you accept Christ, you're baptized, I think that's number one. And then I think this is the essence of being Christ-like, right there. If we're going to copy Christ, God's blessing, that's it. And so all these ideas are meant to facilitate the discovery of stewardship by your constituents. There's a really good demographer named Paul Ray who's got us broken down, North Americans broken down into 3 groups. And he says consumers, that mentality, are about 50% of our population, and they will give based on how entertaining the worship service is. You have what he calls traditionals, and they're about 25%, and they're the ones who feel comfortable with the word tithe, and they consider it a tax that needs to be dutifully paid. There's a third group that occupies about 25% of the population that are more open to the generosity concept, and they it tends to be linear. Traditionals give birth to consumers who give birth to what he calls cultural creatives, who use a lot of words like I am spiritual but not religious. We have to, and their key number one religion word is relevance. When they're looking for spiritual nourishment, it's got to be relevant. They're the ones who are most likely to get the idea of God's blessing.